So today we're going to be taking a look at Chamber and trying to figure out on what maps is Chamber still actually meta and where has he, dropped off after the big nerfs, of course. So most of the nerfs are going to impact Chamber on every single map. So he's going to be a bit worse on every single map, right? Like, the base cooldowns and the recall cooldowns and it getting destroyed and the slows and the ult points being more and the headhunter bullet increase. That's going to impact every single map and Chamber's just going to be a bit worse. The crucial one, though, is the diameter size of the ring Chamber can stand in that allows him to activate the rendezvous is decreased from 21 to 15 meters, because this doesn't impact every map in the same way. On some maps it has a much bigger impact because some of the more important rendezvous can't be used anymore, but on some maps it doesn't make a difference because you can still use all the same common ones. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through the common rendezvous anchors and talk about, are they still the same? Have they been changed? On what maps will this make a difference to Chamber? So let's start with Ascent.
And it's just that almost relying on their aim at the back of the site and the small piece of utility they have, which I think Liquid Aura is going to be good for.
Oh, Yumpy, don't you dare. He's gone out through mid. He's already taken one, and, well, he's sticking around because Scream is continuing the aggression. It's eventually going to be given up and conceded, but they've gotten out of there with a good amount of damage. And I'll tell you what, if nothing else, they have set the tone for how some of these rounds are going to play out. Maybe not in that fight.
And so here is what I've done for every single map. We've got all of the common rendezvous anchor points, or at least that I could find from watching a couple games of Chamber on that map. And basically, I've color-coded them with a Viper Orb, a Brim Smoke, and an Astra Smoke. Viper Smoke, green, means that it's still fine, right? You can still use it pretty much the exact same way that you could before, and, nothing really has changed. Brim Smoke, orange, means that you can still use it, and you'll get some of the same uses, but you might need to either change the normal position, or you might not get as much full value from that position as you do for some of the others. And an Astra Smoke is red. It was the closest thing I could get to red, which means, it's not that useful at all. So quickly on Ascent here, you can see that most of the common points are still the same and will be absolutely fine. Actually, the one that we saw Yampy use in the clip was this one here. And, this one now you can see doesn't go quite as deep. It still, gives you something, but not as much as it used to. Maybe we'll start to see this a bit more, but that means, less playing down here and less aggressive perhaps overall. And so this one has been impacted a bit. And then the other one very quickly is this one towards Wine that again doesn't quite cover as much as Wine. And so I don't think you'll see that one being used. And here we also have some stats for his non-mirror win rates as well. So we have the maps down the left. You can see I'm covering up some of the later details, but we're starting with Ascent and we have the stage 2 non-mirror win rate. Non-mirror meaning when one team picks Chamber and the other team does not pick Chamber, how often does he win? And you can see here in stage 2, that's all of the game to qualify for Masters Copenhagen. He was winning 47% of those games with the exact numbers in the brackets. Copenhagen plus LCQ, so that's all of the LCQs. You can see here that, again, pretty similar, 48%. And then on the far right is my meta score out of 10. So overall, how good do I think Chamber now is after the nerfs and whatnot and with the data that we already have? And I've given him a 6. Now, a 6 to me means, he's okay, but there's probably better options about. And you could argue that this is with old Chamber. He still wasn't winning over 50% of those games. So you could have argued that Killjoy was already the better choice overall. But now it seems, and it seems likely that Killjoy will probably be the better pick on Ascent.
Light shields coming through. Getting early addressal here from Liquid in terms of the Viper's pick, committed towards showers, right? They want to make sure they can hold on to this, but look, he's just looking to come all the way through with the showstopper.
He's taken the space.
Oh my God!
He finds Vera. That's now a gateway opened. So much invested, now they swing off the back as well, trying to build up that momentum, and it's right. It's the right.
So when it comes to bind, as we just saw in the clip there is one very important rendezvous point we have to talk about, and that is this one here towards short, because this is a very common place for Chambers to put down their rendezvous and play in this kind of cubby area here. But you can see that no longer does it extend as far or nearly as far as it did before, and you can't push nearly as far as you could before either, which I think is a big deal. Now we might see, Chambers adapt to this and actually put it in this corner themselves, but obviously that is quite risky. That's going to take up some of your time where you can't actually watch the angle, and obviously the attackers are going to start pretty close to you here overall. And so I do think that this is going to have a big impact on bind this nerf for this particular rendezvous point. There's also some others as well, like this this one in Hooker here, where, you know, you can't nearly get as far as you could before, and also you're going to struggle to ever reach behind this box as well, because, you know, once you start putting it out here, then it might actually just get destroyed and you can't TP away at all. So, you know, I think there are some that are getting pretty big impacts here on Bind, and that will make a difference on this map. And when it comes to the statistics on Bind, there's something really weird and interesting going on here. That stage 2, he was doing okay, right? Fine, but nothing special. But here in Copenhagen and LCQ, more recently, he has been struggling on this map, only winning 6 out of 21 games, which is kind of crazy. And so with, you know, that in mind, the more recent results, and also the fact that he's going to get worse and lose some of his, you know, more important rendezvous points on this map, I'm going to give Chamber a 4, because I think that it's almost certain that, you know, there will be better alternatives there. You know, running Skyfade instead of a Chamber, I think, you know, will almost certainly be a better option overall.
Now going to see them actually still have a pretty decent purchase here.
Moving on to Breeze, and you can see that for the most part things are still the same. There is this kind of more aggressive rendezvous that, you know, used to cover the whole of this elbow. You come around, swing this corner, that I don't think you'll see too much anymore. But as we just saw in the clip, it's quite common now for Chambers to do this rendezvous instead and run down here, put this down and swing this corner, which is still perfectly fine and viable. So I don't think you'll see, you know, too much change overall here on Breeze. You know, some are a bit worse, but for the most part, it's still fine. When we take a look at the stats on Breeze, again, Chamber has started to struggle a bit, and we have seen a bit of a Cypher renaissance, you know, from teams like Guild, 100 Thieves, Mech even as well, more recently. But on the whole, I still think Chamber, as we saw, will still be pretty good on this map. You know, that is a very small sample size on the whole. So I think, yeah, I've given Chamber an 8 out of 10 because I still very much expect that he will be kind of the preferred pick, but I wouldn't be surprised if we did see a bit more Cypher overall. That's why he's not a 9 or a 10.
Yep, been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Yeah, because that's another collat for CNED potentially.
Of course it is.
Oh, did Starzo spot him?
Big knife.
Did Starzo spot the cross?
It doesn't look like Nats is not peeking like he's aware of this. No, okay, maybe. Meh, I've lied. I've really lied to you. Good flash, but he has to TP away and leave Shados on an island.
Moving on to Fracture, again, you can see there's only really one purple here, and that is this one here. But as we saw, the one that Nats just used actually was just here, which again is going to cover, you know, all of the things you really wanted to anyway. So I do think that even though, you know, this particular one is a bit of a purple now, perhaps, there's still viable alternatives. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. The same is towards the stairways as well, where you could probably just find maybe a slightly more risky spot where it might get destroyed, but you know, it's going to be probably fine for the most part. So I think on Fracture, everything pretty much is still going to be the same. And when we look at the stats of Fracture as well, I think that Chamber is just definitely going to be better on Fracture. You know, not too much has changed. I mean, there isn't that many non-mirror games of Chamber for Fracture anyway, because everyone picks him because he's just so good, he fits the map. And so I've given him a 10 out of 10.
What you're looking for, interestingly enough, Net did manage to build up his ultimate, so they do have the Rolling Thunder. Looks like a lot of presence being shown towards A lobby. GTP risks taken in straight into mid there.
On Haven here, there is like a couple spots that maybe are a bit worse than they were before. Notably this one where you can't hide in the back of this cubby anymore from this rendezvous point. And also like ones like this where, you know, you might have to take a bit more of a risk coming down towards short from somewhere like this. But on the whole, I still think that, you know, most of kind of the crucial ones, like this one towards A-long here that you can just put in here, those are still absolutely fine. You can still get off some weird off angles like we saw in the clip from Will there as well. So I still think that on the whole, you know, things are okay here on Haven. And when you look at the stats as well, Haven has been a pretty good map for Chamber in the past. It's come down a bit more recently, but still nothing too bad. And so I'm going to give Chamber an 8 out of 10 with that in mind.
For Liquid. Very impressive defensive side thus far. And they've got the Viper's Pit to lock down B. Win rate should be reaching for the sky in this round. Operator for Yumpy. Given the chance for an early peek here as they start to push through, funnel in to the A side. He still hasn't been spotted and he picks his moment perfectly.
And then we come to Icebox, and obviously we see, you know, plenty of good little spots. I mean, even that one that Yampy was using there, I haven't even put on here, but there's just a ton of different weird spots, right, with different elevations that the Chamber can use on this map, and really not many of them have changed at all. And so on Icebox to finish here, you can see the stats. Actually, he didn't do too well in Stage 2 overall, but then pretty much everyone is playing him for Copenhagen LCQ. So I'll give him a 9 because, you know, I do think when you look at the Stage 2 stats, it kind of suggests that maybe you don't need a chamber, like super need a chamber, but he still is, you know, going to see a ton of play there, as you can see. So obviously with Pearl as well, we'll have to see, but looking at those scores there on the right hand side, you know, I think that yes, chamber still definitely will be meta. There are still, you know, plenty of maps where you'll be seeing quite a bit of chamber, but I do think that on certain maps like Ascent and Bind, you'll probably start to see a lot less of chamber, and then obviously we'll see how Pearl goes as well. But I do think that, you know, Chamber's overall presence should hopefully go down from, you know, something like, you know, 70, 80%, whatever it was before, to hopefully, you know, around 50%. He'll still probably be one of, if not the most picked agent still overall, but it will definitely come down.